Hey, I'm back, and it occurred to me I should go into a little bit more detail about the burning of macronutrients, protein, fat, and carbs, used as fuel in the cell. Remember, they're oxidized. There's this oxidation going on, and that produces energy so the cell can do its job or do its work. And there's nothing you have to do except put in the right fuel, and that cell, if everything else is equal, should do its job or work, produce enough energy to do its job or work. So if it's a brain cell or a heart cell or whatever it is, it'll do well. Now, wouldn't you be healthier? Does it make sense that you'd be a lot healthier if the fuel mixture was right? Well, what I'm going to tell you now will add a little bit more light to this whole thing. And that is why the plate for some people might be, 50% protein fat versus 50% carbohydrates, and why some people need maybe 65 protein and fat, or 75. Or let's take the Eskimos. We know that they thrive on about 90 to 95% fat and protein. And even within the protein fat side, more fat. So different strokes for different folks, we're all sort of designed differently. So you have people who have certain set oxidation rates, and you have to match that with the right amount of protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So this is part of your genetics. This is something that you really can't change, or it would be very difficult to change. It's something that's been bred into you over thousands and thousands, millennia, tens of thousands of years. So I just want to come out and say that there are fast oxidizers and there are slow oxidizers. And, obviously there's going to be people in between, and there's going to be people who are more extreme fast oxidizers and more extreme slow oxidizers. There are certain tribes in South America, for instance, who might be eating the opposite of the Eskimos, 95% carbohydrates and just a little bit of, bugs and, protein coming from little animals and things like that, a little bit that they eat, maybe a little seafood or something. So, and then there's, again, the extreme on this side, 95% protein and fat, mostly fat. So those would be the extremes. And I showed you how on a plate you could kind of start dividing up the plate and try more and more and more protein. You could also do it the other way and try more and more carbohydrates. So we have this fast and slow. A good friend of mine is Bill Wolcott. He's actually the father of metabolic typing, if you will. Metabolic typing is actually the science behind all this. And one thing I read in his book, The Metabolic Typing Diet, is that it's kind of like a radio dial. A radio dial where you're trying to tune in the macronutrient ratios. And so if you're a fast oxidizer, you're going to have a lot of protein and fat in your diet. And so as you start heading this way, adding in more protein, fat, and more protein and fat in terms of ratio with carbs, you're going to try to dial it in. And you might, just like listening to the radio, you kind of dial it in, and then those things we told you about to look for, the satiation and the energy and the sense of well-being, you're going to get, hey, I'm feeling more energy, more well-being, more satiation. Boy, these meals are really satisfying. I'm really getting a lot of good, solid energy. I have a sense of well-being. And so you're going to dial it in, more and more protein and fat, until you actually might go past. So you would feel better and better and better until you get past. And just like tuning in a radio on a car, old car station, you'd go through, it would sound good, you'd go a little bit past, it would start to sound funny, and you'd go just right back a little bit to what the perfect diet for you at that time is. And so you would, dial it in. So you can dial in the amount of protein and fat that way. And you could be doing it the other way too, adding in more and more carbs and trying to dial it in if you were a slow oxidizer. No, we're not going to talk about, the amount of fast oxidizers versus slow oxidizers. There's all kinds of people. And again, there's some in between. we would call them sort of mixed or just mixed up. I'm kidding. So if you're fast and you're slow, and you have some people that are kind of mixed oxidizers. And one more little explanation that might help you out here is, let's say you have, you're trying to balance. That's like a balancing beam. That's the fulcrum. So you're trying to keep this in balance. You're trying to balance out your oxidative rate. So this fuel oxidizes at a certain rate. I'll put a question mark here. If you get the fuel mixture right, it means you're going to get the rate of oxidation right, and that's how you're going to produce the most energy and get the job and work done of that cell. So rate becomes real important. So if you're a fast oxidizer, what kind of fuel would you need to burn? You'd actually need to burn the slowest kind of food. Protein and fat oxidizes more slowly than carbohydrates. So if you're a fast oxidizer, you need to use the slow burning fuel. So you would do more protein and fat, which burn slowly. Because you're a fast oxidizer, you need to equalize there. And the same thing here, slow oxidizers, they need fast burning fuel. Carbs. Sorry about that. So carbs burn quickly. Now, so that's good for a slow oxidizer. If you give, let's just go back to the Eskimo example for a minute. Now, what do you think they are, fast or slow? Eskimos are very fast oxidizers. We just call them fast oxidizers. So they need slow burning fuel. If you were to give them too much carbs, you put a lot of carbs up here, you're going to upset the apple cart. They're going to be starving. Matter of fact, in Eskimo, you could give them plates and plates full, bowls and bowls full of the most wonderfully nutritious and highest quality vegetables and fruit. And because he would just burn it up. You know, he's a fast oxidizer. He's going to burn it up. It'd be like putting paper on a bonfire. And that person would have no energy. So if you are leaning towards fast oxidizer and you're eating too much carbs, you're not going to get the right rate of oxidation. You're not going to produce high quality energy. So we might just say rate and quality. And we also might as well throw in quantity. So if you don't eat the right proportion of protein and fat versus carbohydrate based on your genetic oxidative rate, you will not produce energy. That fuel will not produce energy at the right rate or the right quality or the right quantity, and your cells won't do their job or do their work very well. So I hope that adds a little bit of clarity to the previous little video where we just talked about, you know, having protein and fat on a plate and that sort of thing. So fast oxidizers need more protein and fat. Slow oxidizers eat more carbs, and it's very appropriate for them. And that's what dictates. And it's genetic. And, you know, if you're an Eskimo, you would know this. The problem is we're not Eskimos. We're very mixed, interbreeding. We're part European, part South American, part African, part this, part that. And so that's why it's pretty hard to figure out. More on this subject coming up. And thanks a lot for being with us.